It's 3 o'clock and I'd like to call our finance committee meeting to order. Um, First, please note the mission and vision statement, and actually do kind of think about it from the perspective of our finances as you read through that again today. And then we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. And I guess for board members, just note that there was a little change in the attachments from what we were originally sent, had a D that was taken out. So now this sounds like that storybook for children, the coconut tree.
Right.
D became, became D. So here we are. But I think it's pretty straightforward what occurred there. Any other discussion on the approval of the agenda? All in favor of approval, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign, please. Thank you. And then under consent items, we have the minutes of our last meeting, which was August 18th. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion on the minute? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. Thank you. Now we're on number 5. We have a presentation for the contract compliance monitoring process, and Dr. Bashir.
Yeah, I'm gonna have Leah take over in a moment here. But if you remember when we used to have all the new contracts coming in, we used to have a link to the Laura site. And board members could click on the site and look for themselves if there is any issues with that particular contract. But we're gonna obviously keep the links in future contracts there. But I wanted to remind the board and show you the process we actually do monthly to ensure that all contracts were vested, especially if they have a Laura license, how we look at that, what we do internally, and then it's my desire that once a quarter at the Performance and Quality Improvement Committee, we will show the results of our Laura search, of course, with provider names not mentioned, just by number, to ensure that we're continuously looking at compliance for Laura in our contracts. Because before, you go, hey, what's that thing I found on the Laura site? And you don't know if that's related to anything we do or something else does. Does it put the contract in jeopardy? So I thought the public ought to know, and we walk through the process that shows this board and the public our due diligence in looking at that every month. So I asked Leah, our residential services supervisor, to walk through the process we use every month and to get your just information on it and your feedback. So that's why it's on the agenda.
All right, so there is a separate handout. It's on the screen as well, but it looks like this in your packet that kind of goes through our process. So the first thing is every contracted residential provider we work with each month, kind of about the middle of the month, when we log into Laura and just double check each provider. So two things we're looking for is to make sure their license is still active, because sometimes that we found out that the license has not been active. And then also to see if there's any new special investigations, which is under like the data section or the report section all the way at the bottom. So the special investigations, I know that's what board members were kind of looking at previously, and obviously can still continue to do so. But that could be anytime like there is a rule-related complaint received to Laura regarding that home or that provider, really that home. So it's kind of, this is where it gets a little bit hard to put in a flow chart because it goes two ways. So half the time I will say the residential department, we're normally kind of aware of any concerns, complaints already. So we've already been in contact with the provider, the licensing consultant, potentially like outside resources, like we've had to be, in contact with like animal control, things like that, in the past, and then just to kind of see what that corrective action plan is gonna be from the provider. On the flip side, if we're not aware, that's when we find the investigation on Laura. So once we see that, and typically I would say that's more for our out-of-county providers, because we're not doing the direct case management. So what we do is we look through that investigation and we can kind of determine if an Ottawa individual, if it's related to an Ottawa individual. If it is, we contact the provider and we actually request from them their corrective action plan that they've submitted to Laura. So by the time it's also posted on the website, it means that investigation is closed. So that's why it makes it a little bit tricky, because we're a little bit behind the ball when it's brought to our attention, right? And depending on the severity that you'll see kind of in the next step, we might notify the guardian, right? So if there's a significant event, where there's like a high risk, maybe there's physical abuse, sexual abuse, physical neglect, continuous special investigations, that's usually what, obviously, when we're gonna notify the guardian and be like, we have some concerns with this provider. And then we kind of loop in our contracts department as well. If it's a lower, so like, there's also lower risk, concerns that could be like a medication error. It could be that one time when somebody went and someone's room smelled terrible because they might have just had an accident. And then they'll call that in and, so those kind of concerns we don't take, we take seriously, but it's not like we gotta get that person out.
Then the medication errors did not result in harm
Correct.
in those things.
Correct, yep. And then kind of from there, we report out what we have been discovering. So there's lots of avenues. We report it out to like our monthly residential committee. We'll report to the health and safety committee as well. If there's some significant concerns, we, notify our regional partners. And kind of let them know, hey, like, we've been made aware of this. We're not also making any new referrals to that home provider. And then if needed, we might seek new placement, and then eventually we'll be bringing it to the PPQI committee. So that's kind of what we do each month. I would say most of the time, since a lot of our homes do have an Ottawa case manager, we are really aware of what's going on in the homes. The case managers do a great job at kind of bringing a lot of information to us of like, hey, what do you think about this? Can they do this? Can they not? Which makes it good, that we are on top of it and we have a really good relationship with our residential providers that we can work through issues as well.
Yeah, and our intent is obviously if it's a new contract, we're gonna, of course, introduce that new contract with the link to say, yes, we looked. If it's a renewal, we're gonna have the audit results that we have quarterly there. And then we'll still have a link, but not to that general, you can just look them up if you want to. But we will at the next PQI meeting have our first report on this of how we're doing that. But I just didn't know if the board knew, we actually look at every single one every month. And there's a process of us to do due diligence, and we do that on your behalf. So even though the board is welcome to check, that is the process that we use here, and I will make sure that quarterly at that committee, you see the results. Now, if there are any negative findings, you won't have like, Brashear's residential listed in public, it will be a number. Because sometimes these things happen and the resolution can take a couple of months and they find that no one was really in danger. But please remember in any of our contracts, especially residential, if we believe residents are at risk in that home, we don't wait until some investigation happens, we act and make,
Mhm.
you know, and believe me, our residential network, is very good at telling us of potential issues, that could be happening, and sometimes they over-report, and I'm like, well, you know, you could have waited a month or so, to tell me that, because now, you know, but we already did these 9 steps, but I just didn't know if you were aware, and I think the full board watching this know, that we actually have a monthly process that I'm now gonna fold into our performance and quality improvement system, so you can see it as a full board and as a committee.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's awesome. One question I do have is there any, coordination between you and the home as to whether the corrective action plan has been completed?
Yeah,
Satisfactory?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, and I mean, some of that, like, a lot of the corrective action plans are, is that individual has been let go.
Okay.
Is usually how it's resolved, but, other times it's they're let go and then all the other staff go through additional training, so we
Okay, good.
check in with that as well. We also kind of go through this similar process with onboarding new residential providers. The only thing that's different is we go out and do a site visit first,
Mhm.
just to make sure we've seen the house, seen the premise, meet the staff. But also, like, if there's been a bunch of special investigations, especially like within the last couple of years, we might just say thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah. You know, during COVID, things were pretty,
Probably was a rough time.
and there were allegations flying everywhere, you know. I know we have providers in this room that work several shifts as owners of the place, just to keep it staffed. But, you know, this is also a similar process with all of our contracts. I'll be examining, you know, there are different things to look at when it's outside of residential. They may not have Laura, but they have the traditional licensing or professional licensings and Board of Ethics, and looking at that due diligence, especially when we get outpatient contracts. I've been very keen to say, especially if it's family services, you know, it's family centered. Family has to be in the center of all of the planning and making sure that's known. But I thought this would be good to show, you know, so you understand that, I mean, it's you and the other Amanda, there's this Amanda, but the other Amanda, every month, all 200, like, we have 200 clients in residential, and we look at every one.
Quick question, I do think it's great to see all this put in order, like how this occurred.
Yeah,
The scorecard that Bill presented, is there a connection, is there overlap, is there redundancy, is that
Yeah,
connected with?
yeah, so then on the scorecard, it's simply. Which one is it? It's do a site review, audit and compliance. But we have 3 different indicators about the LRE site review, which is a different one that Leah and I divvy up.
Oh, okay,
Any corrective action plans, that they submit those and then review them, and then the last one is if we request additional information, do they get that back to us in a timely manner?
that's great.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, you're doing this investigation and Leah's over here, you're
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
coordinated in how you're, excellent.
And it's gotten cleaner over time. You know, there was some overlap. We realized I was doing it and Leah was doing it. It's gotten
The
cleaner.
providers notice it was over.
Yeah.
Thank you. So is that it?
Yeah, that's it on that.
Hey, does anyone else have any questions for? Yep. Then, the update.
Yes, on the level of care system. As you know, the last couple of meetings, I'm referring to this handout that wasn't part of the original packet. You know, it has the, it's on the board. As you know, we went through the rate calculator. The one that we're using. I'm gonna tell you where we're at with that. We looked at identifying distinct levels of care in a residential system. Well, just when we thought we had it right, I realized that just about every provider that we have doing specialized residential has a component of clinical wraparound in it. If you remember, I had a model set up where it was like this family license home level. Then I had specialized residential, and then I had clinical wraparound. Well, since we met, through further analysis and discussion, and trying to set rate ranges for the various levels, I realized that just about everybody was in the middle for this thing called clinical wraparound, which lo and behold, I said, that is specialized residential. That there's a component beyond what, direct care workers or direct care professionals do that wrap around the client in almost all of our programs, except for those family licensed home that don't require 24-hour awake staff. Or what I've called the new level of care, enhanced health and safety. So I wanted to bring this to the committee's attention, and I intend to hold a provider meeting as soon as I can to review this as well. That what has emerged is something fascinating, and it leads into this agenda item and then another agenda item later in this discussion about cost associated with enhanced health and safety services that are performed in a residential setting. And so these are the three levels we have landed on. And so all of our specialized residential contracts fall in one of three categories. A licensed family home, which is people live in, don't require 24-hour awake staff, does require physical assistance with personal care, does require monitoring, but someone in the home could be asleep. So think of a general AFC, but a step above it. Okay, so it is a form, it does get licensed, but the staff don't have to be awake all night. And that's definitely the lowest percentage of people we have in our specialized residential care.
So, Doctor,
Yeah.
would that be like Parkview Home in Zealand?
Nope,
or
they're a step below that.
They're not on this grid.
They're not-
So these are only the homes that we're providing funding
Okay.
to. So the Parkview.
And they're not specialized residential?
Correct.
Okay, okay.
And see, the
Got it.
specialized residential certification means that you understand and that there are goals and objectives related to residential care that you're performing on a person-centered plan. So if somebody doesn't have residential personal care or CLS in a person-centered plan, okay, and they're just living somewhere and it's a general AFC, it's not a specialized residential. What makes the thing above the general AFC is the adaptation and the ability to follow person-centered planning and all of the rules and regulations related to CMH in terms of providing direct care and CLS. Now, one could argue there are some of the audience, general fund, kind of general AFCs that to me are like right there. They're pretty close in what they're doing. But that's the difference in our system. And it's the difference between getting a daily rate, money from us every day, to model payment in a general AFC where you get something from the state once a month. And I think it's like next to nothing. It's very small amount of money per month. And it's really saying they don't need the CMH level of specialized residential care. So for us, that's we call them mom and pops, but they're not general AFCs. All the clients they have a specialized license with Laura. They have to follow goals and objectives outlined in a person-centered plan for residential. And they're not requiring 24-hour somebody awake. That's far and below the lowest percentage of people we have. The bulk are in specialized residential, which requires 24-hour awake staff. It's usually traditionally shift staffed. You have shifts. It usually traditionally doesn't have live-in staff or a live-in model, okay? And it requires a high level of monitoring for at-risk behaviors. And it's such a large degree that you have people with some high needs, with people with moderate needs. It's not all the same level of need in there, which makes it tricky
Yeah.
to staff it and to provide the
Right.
care. But what I found was there's a huge range of these people. And some need more clinical wraparound because they have behavioral issues or high physical needs, or other people that's wrapping around them. And as you see, when we get into the renewal of contracts, I created a rate range that reflects this individual difference, going from 200 something day all the way up to $1,200 a day in a huge range. And so then the last one we've noticed, we have a small population of individuals that require one-to-one, that's one-to-one staffing for over 8 hours a day. Most of them in this level of care require it while awake, meaning while they're awake, somebody has to be with an arm's length. It's not just in the same room, right? And it's one-to-one care, sometimes 2-to-1, 2 staff to 1 person. I have a provider that's providing services in Detroit Rain on a 3-to-1 right now. Think about how much of a need that is. 3 staff to 1 person. I challenge the notion that that can't be home and community based. That's gotta be something different. Right? I'll talk more about that. But what emerged was, hey, this enhanced health and safety are outliers, not the individuals, the cost. No one's ever an outlier as an individual. You have a distinct need. But it's my belief that these individuals transcend what we normally think about in terms of specialized residential care. Where we normally don't think of somebody needing someone one-on-one around the clock everywhere they go. That's kind of different than traditional residential care. Now, if there were institutions, and I'm glad there's not, these people will be more likely there than not there, because they require a lot of hands-on restriction of freedom of movement, restrictions in their behavior plan. And you'll see later in this discussion, we have very small, very few of these people costing us over $2 million a year. And I've approached the region on this, and I'll talk to you more about that. But from our system in Ottawa, and there's a lot to say, Donna, on that general AFC level that we have to do work on. We're not there yet. We had to get our specialized system defined with tools to put them in the right categories, the funding correct. And then my next kind of mission is how do we assist general AFCs in our community? Because they're shrinking and they don't have a lot of financial support. So
So
these are the 3 levels.
Well, just
Yeah,
in
right.
my head. So then an example of this licensed family home that does not require wake staff, would that be one of the Harmony Community Homes?
Nope,
Nope, that not.
they're another general AFC that looks like a specialized residential.
Okay,
See, some of them are lookalikes. I'm challenging them, like, why don't you just get licensed?
yeah,
And if your folks do indeed meet the criteria, then you'd get a daily rate versus nothing. But we've helped them in the past with millage to deal with this issue. But they're not. Can you give an example of a family licensed home so Donna can kind of think about?
yeah, please.
Would it be like the My Brothers and My Sisters?
No, they're another.
What's that?
No, there's-
See, that's
Another one I wanna
When they do my,
convince.
like,
It's
It's
very
the specialized-
confusing, cause I know a lot of friends that live in the 3 I've mentioned to you and
Yeah, I was like, so these,
I
is-
don't
I
get
mean,
it.
usually the family licensed homes, there's usually like 4 individuals, it's not like 6. 3 to 4 individuals that live there, so I mean, they're just moving forward is one, strong AFC.
basically when you say mom and pop, that helps. me. That's
Yep.
kind of it, right?
Yep, I was like, it's basically the last name of whoever's running the house.
And the difference is that
And lives
in
there.
that level of, well, that's why I was looking, I'm like, some should become specialized residential homes, so I can give them the daily rate. Okay, but you're then subjected to all of the licensing standards of a a specialized AFC. And you'd have to meet our utilization management eligibility criteria.
Yeah.
But if you're kind of like in almost there, I would entertain general AFCs to talk to me.
Are they coming to your provider meetings? I mean, are they aware
And
that?
they're here right now, Mr. President. Yeah, we have a folks that do attend those regardless if they get specialized residential, but it is a step up. But for your purposes today to understand that what we told you maybe 2 meetings ago, I've changed the levels of care. And I've ended up with these 3 for a very specific reason.
Specialized residential is defined by the state,
Correct.
so the other 2 are unique to Ottawa.
Well, the last one is,
I
but
say
the first one is.
licensed family home, there is, so in licensing, there's a family license, which would be this licensed family home, which would be our mom and pops or CTHs, or you might think of them from how
Forever
we've
ago.
called them throughout the years. And then there's a specialized residential, which would be like your small, could be a small group home. Both of them have to have a special certification, which requires that provider to go through additional training. And then there's goals and objectives in the individual's IPOS or their plan for what how the staff are really gonna be working with them, for both settings.
So in terms of like brothers and sisters, is it really the cost associated with getting to that next level that is the deterrent, or is it?
Well, you'd have to talk to them.
That's what I'm interested, yeah.
But I would suggest that normally what I hear is the obligations that are part of becoming licensed at that level.
Yeah.
The bureaucracy, and some of their residents might not meet that criteria.
Okay.
You have a lot more autonomy, when you're not. The thing, though, you miss out on, which I don't know if it's good or bad, is the daily rate that we could provide if they meet our level of care. The issue is that there's a housing crisis, for everybody, but especially for folks with autism or IDD, regardless of where you are in the continuum. And some of our general AFCs have a long history of supporting folks. I mean, they may be open to CMH, but not getting residential services. So those are the ones I always try to say, hey, could we do that? But it is a large overtaking by the provider.
Yep.
It subjects them to additional sets of licensing, and home and community-based standards that are sometimes not logical. You know, I mean, we were just told recently that if someone in one of our homes, licensed AFC homes, wants to have a 6-pack of beer and they're over 21, they can keep it in the general refrigerator and just label it. Well, that sounds all good and well until you realize you have to have a staff member then standing in front of the fridge the whole day,
Yeah.
preventing everybody else in the house
Right.
that lives there from having a Miller Lite. And so there are some things that make sense when you're thinking community. And things that you're like, we have to use some common sense. I'm all for people over the age of 21 doing what they want, but you know, you are in a licensed specialized home. But the biggest thing is this last level of care that I'm doing a lot of work in defining. It's not defined by the state. I intend to get it to be defined by the state. I intend to start a full court press with our regional entity and partners to legitimize the financing and staffing levels of people that need one-on-one care at least 8 hours a day or more in a specialized residential home. It is not in our funding from the state. It's very expensive, and we constantly have to have providers prove to us they still need it, when I know for a fact some of these people are going to need it forever. And so all these hoops, every 30 days checking, and do they still need it? I believe it's a distinct level of care. And I have the region agreeing that has to be identified, costing associated identified, and some real critical conversations of what are we doing with folks that require 2-on-1 staff at all times, or 1-on-1. So that's why I revised the system. I realized that the bulk of our system is specialized residential with one form of clinical wraparound or another. And then you have the families and the enhanced, where before I was making it too much of a nuance. I'm trying to figure out what I'm gonna pay Heritage, and I was losing my mind because one person, they have 5 things, another person has 3 things, and they're not really that different overall. And so I had to come up with a model to do that. And so I changed the level of care definition, and I wanted to bring it to you immediately.
So the first 2 define the home. And the third is more talking about an individual who might be residing within.
You got it.
Specialized.
The third one is the staffing level within a specialized residential.
Okay.
That we believe to be somewhat permanent, not temporary. Sometimes someone needs a one-to-one, they get back from a medical procedure and they have a cast and they keep picking at it and you have someone there, you know, or some other thing that can be remedied within 90 days.
Have you come up with a criteria? Okay,
Most of it is in front of you right there.
that would be helpful if I read it.
It's okay. But we have a criteria, that has been presented to the region, and the regional entity has agreed to collect information by all of the CMHs in our region to see how many people we have that would meet that criteria.
Gotcha.
And I intend to make this a regional and a state issue. Because it skews the whole system, and it needs to be validated. If this is what we mean, it has to be paid for. And I can't keep telling providers, yeah, keep it up, we'll see, you know? So that's what this was. There's more discussion on the financial impact of this later in the agenda.
I appreciate it, because the notion of deinstitutionalization was a great thing. But it's not all one fell swoop. Not all, like, okay, now we're in the community, now, you get this, or you get this, or you get this, and that's it. There's no uniqueness to folks, and we all know that level of care and severity are very, very important issues.
Typically, the enhanced health and safety level of care is kind of like more of a creative option as well.
Yeah.
We know they might not be successful living, and maybe that's specialized with 6 other people, level of
Yeah.
care where, you know.
Thank you, that, it looks like that, right now, would you say it's remains a work in progress or?
We're getting closer to cement,
Yes.
but we have enough in progress where we can engage our provider network immediately and talk about reasonable rates.
That's a great place to be. Thank you. Okay, any old business? We'll move on to our new business. That is looking at specialized residential, moving kind of into looking at health and safety expenditures, our
Yeah.
attachment A.
Yeah, and so based on that discussion, I sent an email, and it's in your packet, to the regional entity on September 10th. Talking about a preliminary review of just a couple of our folks. And of course, their name and their provider is blacked out. But you can see, based on the discussion that we just had and the definition in terms of needs, and what that means from annual expenditures, and I'll talk about that last one with 2-in-1 staffing in a moment, is even if you have 4 or 5 of these folks, even if you take off the last one, it's still $1 million+ a year of our residential budget for 4 people. And I would like to say that the health and safety needs in this enhanced way is decreasing as time increases. I feel it's increasing over the last 7 years. That there are more and more individuals with more and more complex challenges. And I will defend that statement in the future with overwhelming evidence. Because I don't like to say that without doing that, but I will tell you, an initial review demonstrates to me that there isn't really a movement down in the level of care system. We're not finding, hey, they need it enhanced. Now they do. What we're finding is this enhanced group of people is a permanent situation. And even in our other levels of care, you don't have, people are not moving out of Benjamin's Hope to go to a general AFC. Now, the problem with that is the system thinks in a managed care world, that's exactly what should be happening. In fact, many CMHers are saying, well, they shouldn't even be living at, say, a Benjamin's Hope after a certain point. It's been their home for 20 years. The services have kept them intact for 20 years, but they don't have the same needs. Well, that's not true. In fact, in Benjamin's Hope's defense, they helped develop a tool that shows that it's still there, right? And so the reality is, this is, and I brought it up, I'm spiking the football, but a regional and statewide issue that has to be dealt with immediately as we're dealing with states' notions on who's gonna manage the system. Like, while everybody's figuring out that, this isn't being talked about, and I need to get it on the forefront. That the price tag for people with complex needs to keep them in the community are 2 to 3 times higher than people think. And this group especially. So this was just to show the finance committee and by via proxy, the full board, I've begun the process of notification. The regional entity has not only accepted this letter, they've put a mandate out to the rest of the partners to duplicate the study that I have done with the criteria I have used and to send the raw data back to the region by the end of this month. So I intend to report back on regional data of how many people are actually in this level of care, calculate the expenditures associated with them, and then we intend to go to the state to say, can there be a particular extra allotment or extra funding, or maybe through our lobbying through the county of supplemental added to the budget to help fund unmet health and safety, enhanced residential needs. Because if I can address this need, I can better address with the remaining dollars, the rest of the need we have in the specialized residential network. This isn't just an issue in terms of funding here, there's funding issues all the way through, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But this letter was just to inform you and educate you on them, and you can see it was one-to-one while awake, one-to-one, $518,000. One-to-one while awake, 365, you have different rates, you have different situations on those. Over 8 hours a day, it might have been like 10. I just kind of created my own range there, Leah. I said over 8.
13.
Yeah, it was 13, but she's precise. I'm like over 8, anything over 8, but not a while away. Now we have a new client, not potential client, that's gonna require 2-on-1 staffing. And I'm gonna be using the Robert Brown Center. We're gonna retool that into a residential program to help with folks that need that level of care for this particular individual. And I put what we're thinking that could potentially cost on the front end. And that's close to, just for that person without kind of startup costs, close to $1 million. So you can see the importance of getting the region involved and other people involved if we truly think we need that level of staffing. And this individual, I won't say their name, obviously, and other settings have required 2 or 3-on-1 staffing in the settings they've been in before, just to maintain safety. And my argument is if you need 2 people around the clock just to maintain safety, what level of care is that? Is that community mental health? What is that? And that's the honest discussion that needs to happen. Instead of CMH, you do it, you management, find a provider that's willing to take the risk to do that. Because remember, the provider does it, they're at risk for all their staff, everything there. Their licenses are at risk. So just trying to find a partner, and we have a couple in this county, to take this level of care is hard to do.
Well, the clients are at risk too.
Yeah. Not to mention the most important people, the clients. So it's an issue that requires a honest dialogue about what level of care is this. I'm all for community supports for individuals that need that level, but I'm also in support of making sure it's funded. It's kind of my job. But this was to let you know and give you the groundwork on why that other level of care was created. So it's kind of like my evidence that this is a true thing that's emerging. It's pricey. We already have folks that are close to $1 million a year on that. And they're looking at their plans, there may be times where you might be able to step down for an hour or 2 on the 1-to-1, but not enough to pull that support. I don't want to see pulling support on 1-to-1 just to see if it could work. I don't believe in failure as a way of determining it. And we're told that all the time. You need to have fade out plans in these behavioral plans we have. Over my dead body. I'll write them, but they're not fading out.
So a question on that then. So if you have somebody who needs that high a level of staffing, I am envisioning, health safety risks for the other people in the same home. So are you also factoring in any needs for, the structure of the home to keep the other
Yeah.
people safe?
In the rare cases we do that, we either have them as the only resident or maybe 1 or 2 other roommates planned out. In our current plan with an individual coming online, they'll be the only one at the resident until we deem safe to add somebody else.
Okay.
And
And so-
looking at just the physical home, right? So Robert Brown was a large facility, where there's plenty of space.
Mhm.
That will really work for the individual we're kind of hoping to go there, and I mean,
You can partition
you could, yes.
it, licensing wise, could you?
You could be creative.
Yeah.
Yeah, the idea
I
is you
admire
need,
this because what would happen is these people, we just wait for them to break the law and then we incarcerate them.
Right.
That's what happens.
Right.
And that's abandoning, frankly, that's abandoning.
right, and then, and you know what? And I'm gonna say this may not be popular. It also validates, well, sometimes some of our providers we have now can't keep people.
Right.
Because we tried for months in a setting that had larger groups, and it just didn't work.
And that's not fair to.
No, and these providers feel bad. I've had provider directors call me in tears, saying, I can't keep this person. And it's because why? They're in this level of care.
Right.
That's why. And so that's another reason. I mean, our provider network does everything. We're very fortunate to keep people that we have in them at all costs. But it's devastating when they have to discharge somebody because they can no longer meet their needs. When all they do is try to meet their needs, like all the time. And so this level of care needs to be validated for that reason too. We need smaller settings for individuals. And I just want to say, what is that? If Medicaid can't fund it somehow because it's not home and community-based friendly, then use state general funds, everybody. That doesn't mean don't fund them. We use state general fund for state hospital. We can use state general fund for a lot of things. We have to stop boxing ourselves in the Medicaid box and doing what's right for these people. And so this emerged out of all of that. And I'm glad it did, but it's like, oh boy, there's probably more of these individuals than we think. And getting the state to pay attention to that right now is hard, but we'll find a way. So that's why I wanted to have that discussion. And you'll see when we go through the renewal contracts, you'll see this rate of ranges that includes this range in it. That's why we needed to have a discussion with you, because I didn't have this the last time we talked. I think that's like Forrest Gump, so that's all I need to say about that, unless there are questions.
I just have to add to that, I am fairly certain Ottawa is not the only CMH that is dealing with this. Just from my previous work in the schools and the type of needs that we were dealing with and continue in those settings. It's pretty widespread, so I applaud you for taking us to the region and thank you for that. And then, looking at the service contracts. That's our, you can see us actually.
Yeah. So there's quite a bit here. And they're in two basic sections. We'll start off with. Let me see if the motion's written that way. No, they're all done at once. So we'll start with amended contracts that actually had amended. So contracts that we needed to amend. Then we had a couple of contracts that were renewals that had a change in them. Right? And then the last batch of them are several contracts that we're renewing that were in attachment C, which I like to talk about separately from those two. And so the first couple of these, one of them is, there's somewhat of a misprint in the description that I did not, in the purpose, I did not catch. It's the first amended contract with St. John's Healthcare. It isn't to provide private duty nursing services. It's to provide CLS, OT, and other services. CMH does not provide nursing services. So not even on contracts, we're not allowed to provide ongoing nursing services. So what this adjustment is a change in a person's level of care and this contract provider providing a slew of services. But it isn't specifically for private duty nursing. It's really for the other program descriptive things in there. So that's what that change is. If CMHs in the old day had a whole nursing department that could do a lot of different stuff, it's not the same as it is now. So that's a change on that one. The second one should look familiar. I brought to you last month IVH's contract for 2026. And I said, all right, this is the group, Dr. Lubers's group that helped us with the CCBHC data, helped us get the bonus of $500,000 and whatnot. What I didn't realize is that I had increased the scope of their work for this fiscal year, 2025, and I didn't put it in the amendment. So they went to try to get an invoice paid for September, and ruh-roh, we didn't have enough money allocated for that contract in there. Because I thought it was gonna be handled next fiscal year, but it was actually services for this fiscal year that transcended the initial authorization. So what this contract does, amendment, is for this fiscal year, that's why it says it ends in a couple of days here. To increase the threshold so that we can cover the outstanding invoices for them. It's in the budget, everything's there. I just didn't have the proper steps in place to pay the right invoices. And since Dr. Lubers has been a friend for 20-something years, he's like, I wasn't gonna say anything, but we'd like to get paid. So that's what that is. You do already have a contract approved for 2026 for their services to continue consultation. The full scope of work is being finalized and will be added into that. And so we should be able to avoid this type of issue in the future with that. But there it is again, you're not seeing double. There were two contract amendments for 70x7 and one for 70x7 and building for Men for Life. These are substance use disorder contracts, and it's to include specific grant fund programs to their service array so that we can use grant funding to pay them. I think I got that correct on those.
You did, it's for recovery. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's using grant funds, so it's budgeted for $20,000 or less per year. It's one program's for men and one program's for women.
But the amendment is to adjust the service array so we can pull down grant funding. Which is always good.
It's from the COSUP grant, but I can't remember what COSUP stands for.
Oh, it's one of those,
It's very long.
you happen to know, that's a long,
I think it's COSAP.
SAP.
It's changed.
It's
It's COSUP now. It used to be COSAP. They
Yeah,
changed
as
it.
long as the check is right, I don't care what it's.
I don't know.
But those are for, those amended. The renewals are we have this program where we're looking at, and it ended up being like a new contract where we put it under renewal, right? It was kind of an odd category. This is a service, if I'm remembering it right, yeah, MC3. We provide a service, I don't know if the community understands this, that any general practitioner or general doctor can call us and get consultation on psychiatric meds. So we have a company and an FTE that manages this. We've advertised it before, we'll get it out there again. But any practitioner out there that might be seeing somebody and have a question about psychotropic meds or meds for major depression or those things can call us and we will provide consultation for them as a community resource. It's quite handy. I wish I had some of the utilization data in front of me. I'll make sure I get that to the PQI committee at my earliest convenience because I'm quite curious how many people call us. But that's what that is to mend those FTEs and that ability for us to do that. And I believe that also is a grant funded position.
Correct.
And then for renewal is, you'll see that PT Solutions is both on the renewal list and the new contract list. And I'll tell you what, we had to renew the contract with PT Solutions, make some changes to it. And that's to help us with the provision of providing staff with OT, PT, speech. We actually have some staffing vacancies internally that for the life of us, we can't fill. And so we've had to rely on this contract provider to augment what we can't do directly. It's one of those things though, I'm trying to get a new position filled by the county. It might be better to leave it as a contract right now, just to see how things end up. But this is there because we have to augment our existing team. We've actually tried to hire additional direct staff, hadn't been it. And so this renews that. And when we get to the new contract, it's just to add another person to it. So the number changed. So you'll see it twice in your agenda today. And so those are the renewals and amendments that have changes. And then here's the mega packet. Every year, One of the decisions that I made this year, which did not make my contracts department too happy, but we're doing it, is that all contracts will be 1-year contracts. Traditionally, we're having residential contracts and others that go 2 years. I believe it matches the federal procurement standards to negotiate rates with a provider every year. In the past, a provider, okay, we'll pick on, say, CMHOC, will send me something saying, hey, we're looking for a 10% increase. And I could say, you got a 2-year contract, see you in 2 years. And they could say, well, that's one way. Right? And let's just say that our partners have been very good at working with that framework with us. But it's my belief we're better off with the State of the Union things are, using our new rate calculator system at every single year, seeing if there are changes in the needs and condition of the client, contracting annually for that, and figuring out huge increases in provider costs. Like, I don't know how much their health insurance is going up, but ours at the county, we're still not sure yet. And every time I ask, it's higher. Right? It can be high as 30% or more. Well, that has an impact. So even though this was one of the years, it was at the end of the 2 years, and there's a whole bunch of contracts coming before you, just to prepare the committee, this will be an annual process. As soon as we get the rates decided, we'll be working on next year's. Because we have to be that nimble. So what did I do? If you look on this attachment C, you'll see the service type. Okay, so what kind of contract is it? Residential. Then you have the new level of care designation if it's a residential or something, right? And you'll notice specialized, family, right? Sometimes it says specialized and enhanced, right? Meaning they could have clients that we're already visioning. And then what you have where it says risk threshold is the range of possible daily rates, range of rates. And I'll probably rename that to range of daily rate in there. And so you can see that some specialized residential, you'll see that the range is 229 to 550. If we think the rate is going to be over 550 a day for a residential provider, we're assuming they're going to be in that enhanced level of care. And if not, we'll kind of see why that's the case. The reason why I want you to look at it from this way is that throughout the year, if somebody goes from family to enhanced, and we have all those listed there, or say we're just in the enhanced, the specialized rate range of 220 to 550, and their need changes. They now need $300 a day versus 228. I don't want to have to keep bringing to the board 200 possible changes as their level of care changes. What I want to do is have you approve the rate of the range of the rates. And through our budgeting process, our quarterly review of the budget, our monthly review of the budget, see if we're staying within our budget. Because if not, and what we've had to do is every time a change happened, even if it was $1, I had to bring it up to the board. Yeah, now I have to give, I don't know, Mocha an extra $5 a day, right, for this, and that changed the contracts. So the way our contracts are going to be written is that if the provider is going to provide all, 2 or 3 of those levels of care, those ranges will be agreed upon in the contract. And then we begin the process for each individual being served by that provider to get to the actual rate within that range. And we're going to use the rate calculator. Now, Leah and I have already done a rate calculation of everybody in our system. Our next step is to meet with all of the providers over the next 30 days, go over what we found in the rate calculator, which range they're in, and see how close we are. See how close we are in terms of matching what they're saying they need and what we think they need. Now, when we initially did this rate calculator, I will tell you, we had some providers that got an increase, some providers that got a decrease. I'm not decreasing any of the provider rates because I have to adjust for the years of no adjustment. Okay, so you'll see that. But the value of doing it this way, approving the contracts with the appropriate rate range, allows me to make sure that the overall budget is budget, and when we have changes in that, the impact, But it then allows for individual changes in the rate per client as their needs change during the year without having to come back before the board and say, we changed this by $10. Now, what I do intend to do for the finance committee is for information only, show you the monthly impact of changes. So I'm not gonna ignore the issue. I'm gonna come back in and say, hey, we had a plus or minus this to our overall residential budget because of these items. But it doesn't require you then to go into each contract and do this to every single change up and down. So what all these changes are reflecting is you approving, yes, we're renewing the contracts. Yes, these are the rate ranges, knowing that there could be multiple different rates for different people in a home within that range. And my obligation to the finance committee is to show you the impact on any change to any major line item, month to month, quarterly to quarterly, if we're projecting an increase. I know I'm gonna have to come up with additional Medicaid revenue to assist the residential budget next year. It's either going to be an increase from the state or from the region or other changes to deal with what we've even found out preliminary. But we're not exactly sure the dollar amount yet. But the process is renewing the contracts with the range. Lee and I then meet with the residential providers, go through our rate calculator, see how far off we are. We're pretty dead on some of them, I know. Some of them I'm like, uh-oh, we have to talk and figure out how we're missing things. And then that becomes the rate that they are being paid. I would anticipate that's gonna happen in October and November.
It's like what this does, it actually goes back to each person having their own individualized rate rather than grouping them based off of the home, which we used to do. So we're just kind of reinventing the wheel, and it also allows too, if it goes through, like, for some of it, it's really more like if an individual's care needs change, it's really that's being able to authorize that one-on-one staffing, which is really most of the time limited, but by the time it goes through the board,
Could be over.
it's over, and the provider still has to wait 3 months to actually get reimbursed for, you know, the challenges they just went through with that individual, so.
Yeah, and since we have this committee, I will bring in the impact to the residential budget to changes we do. I just don't want it on a per contract basis, because then you're faced as a board going, I'm not gonna approve that Heritage Home contract because I don't know, and then that client doesn't get care. Versus Bashir's, what are you gonna do about the residential budget because it's 10% overspent? What's the plan? Are we moving money from other resources, or what are we doing? Is the region, it gets the conversation on balancing the budget and not denying care. And so this process allows that to happen and provides flexibility for both us and the provider to get the care done. Cause right now our contracts are like, you get $330 a day, no matter who's in your home. Well, until something changes. What if you need 150 or 490? Right? And it's been a long process, but we're getting there. I'm smiling because I keep changing the rules, so Leah has to keep redoing the analysis based on, well, what about this, you know?
PQI will be looking at the trend.
Finance
will
will,
be looking at
finance,
the
yeah.
trends.
Yeah, now it is dependent because, you know, you have utilization trends,
Right.
which one committee could look at, but the fiscal impact, that's our biggest expenditures residential. So we keep that and autism, keeping an eye on those here. But the thing is that no CMH can deny residential care. So to me, it was kind of really difficult. The board was in before the last forever of like, I'd like to improve this increase, and people like, so how are we gonna pay for it? And my answer was, I don't have a choice, I'll figure it out. We had to put some parameters around this, get to common sense around this, and get the data to the right people to understand the issue. Because the only way to not spend money in residential care is to deny the care. So we redid how somebody gets in, how we're making the determination, how we're following it up. What are the rate ranges? And for some providers, they haven't seen a rate increase on the medical Medicaid side in years. And so this allows me to have the flexibility about it, but also allowing the board to meet its obligation of monitoring the budget without having to be put in a position to deny a contract for residential or any care of an individual consumer. So that's why you see it in this format instead of the rate is actually this. It's to be determined. It's in that range.
It looks like a budgeting nightmare, but I don't know. Amy's been in this discussion too, I'm sure. But it does look, I mean, I totally understand why you need to do this as, you know, it's a huge range. And then you look at that and the number of individuals at that range.
Yeah, if they're on the high end, right?
Mhm.
We have historical trending, what we know now,
Mhm.
which will help us determine.
Yes. Does this eliminate a home that is specialized residential from taking an individual in who has enhanced health and safety needs?
No, what we would probably do is if it's not in their, so we're gonna try to have these contracts where if you're on a specialized residential provider, that you sign on that you might be one of these others, having a contract. We just didn't put on the grid if we didn't know for sure they already have.
Okay.
So contractually, we'll,
The grid is showing where the current enhanced health and safety individuals fall, but I'd say that would be something we'll discuss when we meet with the providers. to
Yeah.
See if they.
yeah, and you know, if it's a temporary one-to-one, it's one thing. We're talking about things that we know are gonna exceed 90 days or more. But no, it would not preclude them of being in that. We just wanted a snapshot where we're at now.
So then with those enhanced cases, since they're so individualized and like, you know, the one nearly $1 million, will you be bringing those individual cases to us then?
In summary, yeah, I
Okay,
wouldn't be able to bring each
right,
one forward, but in summary form, you bet. And
Okay.
so there'll be an extra special utilization management of those cases. Because the reality is that I'm deeming them almost permanent.
Mhm.
And if that's not the case, that would be good for the client. But, you know, you're probably right, though, that if we have like, say, a brand new one that's over a certain dollar amount, we'll bring it individually. I just have to be careful because of, you know, who naming the client.
right, right,
You know, we have an individual in this home and you're like, well, there's only one person in that home I know of.
yeah,
But I can find a way to do that.
yeah.
Especially all enhanced, so we put a note, all enhanced level cares for approval, we'll have to get approval
Mhm.
individually, that's fine. Cause they're such big items, we'd want that anyway.
Right,
Yeah, two of them can break your budget,
right.
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
three of them, you're like, oh, 5. Right. So with that friendly recommendation, I'll say that we will bring all individual and like if we have a new individual enhancement coming up, we'll bring that separately. We'll just protect the name.
Yeah.
Of the client, obviously,
Okay.
such a big ticket item.
Mhm.
Thank you for.
So that's all of those contracts were amended and renewed.
You see a big smile on Bill's face.
Yeah.
So let's, is there a motion to approve the amended and renewed service contracts as presented with the exception of the St. John's home changing, the purpose?
Support.
Moved and supported. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
All right, we got new contracts. There's 3 of them. One, you've got a late handout in. It's the one that, well, maybe you didn't.
Yes.
I'll start with that one first. As you know, it's this one, right? Yeah, you got it. Michelle, Marisco. So Michelle was our Director of Adult Mental Health Services. She retired. And we are in dire need of a behavioral psychologist to run our behavioral treatment planning program and system here at Ottawa CMH. And in the past, we've kind of delegated to people. At one point, Lynn, the CEO, was doing it. Okay, but I want a distinct person that's focusing on the Behavioral Treatment Review Committee that has no potential real or imaginary conflicts of interest. And so the COO and Eric said, let's get Michelle to do it. And because we actually are losing the staff member that's currently doing it, she's leaving, we had the need. And Michelle has generously accepted to take that role to chair and help us manage the Behavioral Treatment Review Committee at the particular range that you see there. And I don't know, it's 24 hours potentially monthly. There's some front end stuff. She's got to learn all of the cases. I think there was some other front end stuff, Anna, she had to learn.
Yeah, it's getting more up to speed on the home and community-based settings, rulings that are out there regarding behavior treatment planning. She will also be representing us at the Lakeshore Regional Entity for their behavior treatment planning committee. And then at the state level, there is also a behavior treatment planning committee, so she's gonna have a few more meetings to attend. But because she has the skill set and the proper credentials to do this, and she will do a great job at it. She was chairing it prior to her retirement, and then handed it off to the person who's currently doing it, who's leaving us for a different opportunity. But it is sort of a unicorn position,
Yeah.
trying to find somebody with the appropriate credentials who has that skill set to be able to manage.
And I like that it's a third party looking at this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she can't, our internal staff can't say, well, and they're, you know. I like that part of it, a lot.
Yeah, I was really happy with this.
So there's
Might have
that.
heard a squeal from my.
Right. I'm like, we can't get rid of this person. Oh, wait, this will be wonderful. Right. The other two, one is Relias, and it's, this is related to our training platform. I don't know, Bill, if you want to talk about that one at all.
Sure. So we had a training platform under NetSmart, which was the company that had our electronic health record avatar. And with moving to PCE, we decided a couple of things. And one, that the NetSmart was no longer supporting the platform. So if we had issues, it was, sorry guys, type of thing. And then two, it didn't have the required trainings that we need for CCBHC. So a strong recommendation from the state. And there's 120 CCBHCs around the country that use Relias. And so we decided to go with Relias for this. The first year is more expensive because we have to pay for the implementation, the transition type thing. That's $2,600 of it. And then about $4,000 we have to take the data from NetSmart and move it over into Relias. Because if we get audited, we can download it into an Excel spreadsheet, but if we get audited, there's nothing to say that I couldn't change some dates on things or something like that. So it has to be in the system. So nobody can do anything funky with it. So it'll actually end up next, not this coming year, but the next year, it'll be cheaper than what we're paying for the program now.
Relias also allows our staff to be able to access CEUs.
Yes.
Which
Yes.
saves us dollars on the other end when we're sending people out to train.
And Bill, can you remind me how many people we have in our training department? One. So without these resources, it's very difficult for us to do that. We have one person in our whole training department for hundreds of thousands of things we gotta do. But that's what that is. And then the PT Solutions, adding an additional person, the way that contract works, it's a number of people. So that's why it wasn't amended. You know, and just add, I wish we could, we'll look into that, Bill, like maybe we can get the contract where they add somebody, it's not a new.
Right.
It's like.
Yeah.
And it's for PT, OT speech, and you know, I'll be honest with you, I don't know what's gonna happen at the regional level with PHP procurement. I don't know if we're just gonna be a Medicaid service provider. I don't know if we would choose that service to provide direct. So I'm kind of in a holding pattern on how to grow an existing service right now, without knowing what my role and function could be a year from now. And would OTPT speech be something we provide directly as a county department? If we're just a provider, we're not managing the care. I don't know the answer to that. So I'm actually okay with these kind of contracts kind of staying where they are, not having a lot of change until we know what's gonna happen. But that definitely is why that's.
That does make sense.
I believe that's the new contracts.
All right.
I have one question on that. So, 725.60 per encounter. Is that like,
That's how much if we would have done it.
oh, if you would have done
So,
it?
yeah,
Wow, that's
Yes.
quite a difference.
yes. And so one of the things we put on there and all these things, if we were doing it, how much it would cost. So I wanted you to know that difference, right?
Right.
And a lot of that's due to indirect time. That goes into this stuff. You know, when we're paying a contract provider, and they know this the hard way, we're only paying them for what they're doing face to face.
Mhm.
With our folks, we also have costing related to when they're not meeting with them, so it makes their direct contact rate much higher. But I started doing this saying, gee, if I had to compete against the provider network, where would I stand? Right now, I'd get killed,
Mhm.
but that's just because we do some CMH distinctives that are different
Mhm.
that we have to account for. But we started that journey, I remember Amy was looking at it going, yeah, you get, that's a high number.
It is. a-
But that's why I put there. There's the contractor rate, here's what happened if we were doing. At the current levels of productivity, the way that we understand it, you know, because our systems have changed too in the last year. Asking the question, answering the question, how much does this cost us, is a lot more tricky than one thinks at the moment. Yeah, but that's what that is.
Okay,
That's what we're not paying.
okay.
To approve the September 25 new contract services as presented and forward to the board. Moved and supported. Any further discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye,
Okay.
and opposed, say no. Yeah.
You see the value in putting that there.
And
Yeah.
next on the agenda is looking at our financial statements. That's it. Yeah.
Okay, so the first is our year-to-date through the end of August for statement of activities in the mental health and SUD fund. August being period 11 of the fiscal year, so coming into the last month of the fiscal year. I'll start with actual to target. Again, we have a weighted target percentage. We're a little bit over with that actual. But if you look, we did reserve a large percentage for our closing month, just based on historical activity. We'll probably have that. But you know, that 16% versus reserved for, 18% reserved for the last month of the year, which is almost 2 full months. If you think about 1/12 of a year is actually 9% usually. So, all of that said, we are coming into, a closing. If you start looking at the revenues, we've got, year-to-date actuals, in that first segment, the Medicaid, Healthy Michigan, Autism, State General Fund, kind of tracking within, you know, aligned with our budget and year-to-date and a little over. The COFRs, you know, we reconcile those at the end of the year, so that's, and grants are all paid on a, would all be, you know, grants would be covered under the expense, so it's all drawdowns for actual expenditures. And you'll notice we have our CCBHC quality bonus payment has been received, so that's an additional $513,000 that was added. General other revenue is down, kind of based on some of those factors of insurance. Last year, we had additional state general fund that ended up there, so it kind of skewed where our budget should be for this year. But overall, in those revenue categories a little ahead already for the end of the year. CCBHC is one that we're working on. We did finalize the PPS rate for the organization, and we are starting to enter daily visit counts, which translate to additional revenue for our DCO providers that we've been talking about. So I think positive movement in even those revenues that are still a little under year to date. And then if you're looking at the expenses, we're in a closing out the year with a surplus in salary and benefits that covers for mental health services. It covers all deficits within the other categories. So that's a good place to be. SUD being primarily grant funded, you know, that kind of ties to those revenues that we're not receiving yet. So right now, if you were to ask me, I would project our where we'll land for the year is, you know, under $2 million of shortfall, and hopefully even better than that. I would say maybe 1.2. It really, we have a lot to catch up on with the daily visits for CCBHC, but feeling that we're in a moderate position considering where we've landed before. We have learned a lot more. Listening to Leah talk about some of the, you know, all of these tools for specialized residential really will be able to hone in on the day-to-day and that activity and get that kind of buttoned up for those large expenditures, so.
We had a $5 million deficit and keeps going down.
Mhm. And then for millage and grants, we're right on schedule. You know, that fund kind of our primary expenditures have been made and most of our revenues have been received. We have one more tax payment that will be, or I'm sorry, we have more grants that will be closing out in that fund, and we'll be in a healthy fund balance for the remainder of the year. Yeah.
Is there a motion to approve the budget as presented and forward it to the board?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Are there any further discussion items or questions about it? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. That motion carries. And now we are at a point of receiving any public comment. Is there anyone here who would like to make a comment? Please state your name and where you reside, and 3 minutes for your comment. Appreciate everyone who's here. Is there anyone who would like to comment? No. Is there anyone on the line, Amanda? Nope, nobody online. No. All right. Then this meeting is adjourned, and thank you all for your participation.